All right, we'll move right on to the second one. So what we're trying to do for the University of Arizona, anybody familiar with task stream? Okay, yeah, a little bit. So this idea of having a common knowledge base or knowledge management system to understand all learning outcomes for all degrees. We have about 350 degrees at the U of A, and we want to get better. Our accreditation, HLC, is coming in 2 years. We have documentation about what those learning objectives are, and then the departments are responsible for measuring those things. But it's got some edges, as you'd expect with offering 360 degrees from like 150 departments. It's a lot of human beings coming and going over time. And so we've got this system called Task Stream where we want to be populating that information related to, here are the 5 core classes for that degree, here are the 5 to 25 learning objectives for that degree, here's what the 3 levels are introduced, practiced, and mastered related to that learning objective, but it has no real data, right? It's a great map, it's a great plan, it's a great blueprint that we can build, but we want to also take a system where we take those same learning objectives and apply them to the assignment folder and have faculty say yes or no for every student. So at the end of the year, I can have a spreadsheet that tells me these are the 75 students in your degree, these are the 31 learning outcomes, and I get a yes, no for every student for every learning objective at the end of the year. That's sort of the goal to get that. And we leave the data in the LMS. We have a 10-year deletion policy, right? And so it's Brightspace's problem. We move to their cloud. They get to figure out how to host 40 terabytes of data with 1 terabyte of database. I don't have to have those conversations anymore. And they do it well. And so that's what we're trying to go to. So things that are in scope in this project, it might sound silly, but it's almost less about, it's not so much about competency-based education as much as just infusing the idea of learning objectives into the conversation with faculty. We're a research one, we have world-class content, but we hire researchers who also teach mostly. We should strike that from the recording. But we try to make them great teachers as they move through over the years, as they get more and more practice with teaching. And that starts with them being able to know what their learning objectives are and being able to know what their course learning objectives are versus the degree learning objectives, because those are not always the same thing, and in many cases are not the same thing. But they need to satisfy both. And along those lines, using it as a jumping off point in the conversation. So getting into things like backwards design, getting into asking questions as a way to make it stick, and those kinds of things. Things that are out of scope, letting faculty get creative. We have a lot of creative faculty. I sometimes say I work in idea factory. Like higher ed, all my faculty sit around and they think up incredible ideas and they go out and test them. And that's great. That's why I love coming to work. But that was sort of out of scope of this project. I didn't want them individually creating learning objectives. I just wanted the ones from the degree mapped to their course, saying yes or no for each student. One of the things we did, which may be somewhat unique, but you can do it through roles and permissions, we turned off the faculty's ability to create learning objectives and to create competencies. So we have it on at the department or program level inside D2L. We have it off at the course level, but that does still allow them to choose what's been shared down. Does that sort of make sense, right? That you can build it, you can go to the org unit editor, find your department or program, build it there, and share them down across all the classes in that department, so that faculty don't sort of hurt themselves by recreating things that they thought they'd see and getting confused. They're just, the only thing they have to do is attach it to the assignment folder or attach it to the quiz questions. This talks about the sharing. I'll zoom in on this as well. So one of the things that comes up, especially as you cross disciplines, it turns out different disciplines have different ways of thinking about their list, their set of learning objectives. My English department had like subcategories. They had a category for rhetorical awareness, critical thinking, composing, reflection, and revision. I go over to my engineers, they have ABET A through K, they have one list. They don't want to see subdivision, right? They just want to see all A through K on one list, right? And so it's just a matter of understanding where they're coming from, and the tool lets you do it either way. So I would say don't be prescriptive in how you want to set up the competency learning objective hierarchy. Listen to your faculty and let them tell you how they want it set up. One list or sub lists, because you can do either one. And it doesn't, the key part here is Data Hub. Data Hub gives you granularity of learning objectives as compared to just the competency. If you're just in the learning environment only, the front end, the GUI, all you get is completion status at the entire competency level, but Data Hub gives you item by item by item by item. So it doesn't matter if you have a long list or a short list. It's just a set of things, and Data Hub gives you each thing individually. That's mostly viewable. So we used, there are several methods you can use to say whether the student gets a yes or a no. My two favorites and where we tried to steer people into is either a rubric or a quiz question answer, because quiz questions can be auto-graded and tied. You can also do a rubric. Again, we did not want people getting super creative, so I'm sort of almost constantly talking people back down, keeping it simple, keeping it replicatable, keeping it understandable for the 5 other faculty that are going to be involved in your department, because just because you think it's awesome doesn't mean the other 4 do as well. And so we go with a rubric that has 1 row, 1 criteria, 2 levels, met or not yet. And that's where we keep it. You can get a lot more complicated, but it's going to be harder and harder to get buy-in. The main difference between the first picture I showed and this picture, under MET, I had the faculty members, when they go to the grading screen, some faculty wanted to be reminded of what it meant to have met audience awareness in the writing. So I couldn't just say met. If I can get away with the first one, which is just met and not yet, this is nondescript enough that every learning objective can be tied to 1 rubric. If faculty need a reminder of what it means to have met audience awareness as compared to the other learning objectives, if they need a reminder for each one what it means to meet or not meet, I have to have a rubric for every learning objective. And that just makes it a little harder when you get into the course design to keep your naming conventions clean. Because the rubric is an object and the learning objective is an object, and you need to attach both to the activity. So if you can talk them into them sort of inherently understanding, or my favorite thing to do is print it out and tape it to the wall above their computer of what it means to meet and not meet for each learning objective. It's how I keep track of several key projects, including downtime. That's my way of tracking downtime. I still like tape and paper, or thumbtacks and paper, because it's always in front of me and I never have to wonder what I named it or where I stored it. But if you can do that, I'd highly recommend the first one of met or not yet with simple text. But if you can't, then you're going to end up with 1 rubric for each learning objective as compared to 5 learning objectives and 1 rubric.
So are you using the same kind of system? Are you using a similar system with the rubrics then, where faculty cannot edit them, but you're sharing them from department or college level down? No,
nope.
It's not the same.
So for rubrics, we do allow faculty to create rubrics. The complexity of the rubric tool, as it currently stands, has led to very low adoption, but we do allow faculty to create rubrics. When you're in the assignments folder, there's different places to attach rubrics. On the properties tab, I believe, or the assessment tab, you can attach the rubric for grading, but underneath the learning objective tab, you attach the rubric for the competencies tool. And so they're located in different places. When you go to grading in the assignment tool, they're just sort of stacked on top of each other. But yeah. Over-engineering rubrics. One of the other hurdles is faculty have gotten, at least some of the faculty that I've talked to, they have gotten accustomed to believing that achieving a B on a research paper means, of course, the student met the learning objective. Or all my students that got A's definitely met every learning objective. Is it technically possible in the class to have met the learning objective and earned a C? I know for my own classes that I teach, if my students hand in horrible grammatical errors, they can't get over an 80. I teach a management degree grad class, and so if you turn in 40 pages with 20 plus mistakes, no one's ever going to read your paper, and so you do not get an A in my class, and you get a B, less than a B on the paper. But they could still earn analytical thinking. Does that make sense? And so like you might have faculty who want to tie gradebook entries, scores, to a learning objective, and you need to decide if that's sufficient evidence for meeting a learning objective. Is earning a 95 sufficient evidence? Can you earn a 95 and not have met mastery of a learning objective? Can you earn an 85 and not have met mastery of a learning objective? And if the answer is yes, then you shouldn't be using scores. We decided not to use scores, but there's some gray there. Check with your accreditation office as well, because they will probably have a very firm understanding of what meets learning objective evidence. So in quiz questions, it's a little tricky. There's multiple parts there. Whoops, sorry, right click. No. You start here, you associate, well, there's an associate learning objective, and then you come down to learning objective, and you associate questions, and you associate an assessment. And then these are the settings that I like. You can choose score on selected questions. I'm saying you got to earn 99% or higher than 99%. There is equal sign, greater than. And then you can associate your quiz questions with that button. So it's kind of awkward. It's in Daylight, but it hasn't really been updated for Daylight totally all the way as far as workflow goes and clicks. And so you end up with a lot of the look for the upside down triangle, look for the sub menu kind of thing. You get used to it really fast, but it is there. Security concerns related to this process. The results are coming from Data Hub, and so how are you going to transmit those files? Data Hub is not cool enough where you can ask for a specific course. If the program level outcomes have been shared down from the department org unit, I've never gotten Chloe to work, if you know what Chloe is. It's a custom report in Data Hub. It's meant to do what you're looking for, but I've never gotten Chloe to work when it's shared down. And so you're going to end up combining data from a couple of different files, and how are you going to give that data back to your faculty? We use a box folder. It's pretty simple, but you should not email this stuff. You should not attach a file to an email and send. Other things that you should probably want to get some protection on or clearance or run up the flagpole, so to speak. Will this data be used to justify the quality of teaching? Will this data be used as part of student success initiatives? It's important data. You're probably giving it, at least I am, at the end of the year or end of the semester. I'm not giving it out weekly because it's somewhat cumbersome to build currently today. Quality of teaching, there are really lots of rules around tenure and promotion packets and what goes in them and what doesn't. And so you want to be clear that this is not for us, we wanted to be clear that this is not an indicator of the quality of teaching. This is just surfacing what students have and have not learned related to learning objectives as compared to grades. And we were trying to have that conversation, not implying that you're good or bad based on the results. Maybe you're course design could use some tweaking, that kind of stuff. But it can be a little scary, and as my friend from Minnesota, my colleague at Minnesota, is like fond of saying, he has lots of strong unions in his state related to higher ed faculty. I'm in Arizona. We don't do unions. We even make it super hard on unions. And so be aware of those kinds of constraints and have those conversations with the higher ups. The 3 main files from Data Hub: competency activity results, competency objects, and user headings. What that lets you build is an Excel file with these columns: first name, last name, username of each student, the department that you're providing the data for, English, engineering, whatever it is, the learning objective name, the activity name and activity type, assignment. It's an assignment folder versus quiz is the activity type. Activity name might be research paper. Was an assessment type rubric or non-rubric? The rubric name, rubric level. There's a lot of data that comes out. It's about 20 columns. This is the cleaned up version where I deleted extra stuff from the 3 files. But it's a lot of column headings. And so you might talk to your faculty about which column headings they actually want. Because if you send them a wall of data, an Excel file that's A through Q and goes for 500 rows, they will likely never open it and email you ever again. It will be a failed project. And so understand, the same way you took the time to understand how they think about learning objectives at the beginning, one list or sub-lists, think about what they want to see in a results file and delete the extra columns. One of the lessons learned we haven't covered yet is just Microsoft Excel cannot open a file. It's a little higher than 1 million rows, but it's basically 1 million rows. For the 3 files that I talked about, we add about 10,000 users a year. We have about 270,000 users total. My files are still all under 1 million rows. I'm okay for a little while with these 3 files. But if I go over to like quiz question results, there's no way I'm opening that in Excel. It's 500 million plus rows. And so depending on what data you actually want to pull out of Data Hub, like you might go download the Data Hub admin guide, do some reading and be like, yeah, I want these 5 files, talk to your admin, get those 5 files, and then realize you can't open 2 of them. Right? You move into a SQL true language, like MySQL on a server or something of that nature. If somebody has a great tool, I've tried R a little bit. I'm not that great at R. If somebody's made R work on a 100 million row table, please tell me, teach me, share with me. And that's it. Questions, please. Sorry, one second.
In an earlier screen, you had a screenshot of an individual, I think it was a question where you had associated a learning objective. And I assume that you're associating learning objectives with other assessment methods that you might be using. Can you give me a ballpark idea of how long it would take to, I guess, build this architecture that you have here?
Sure. So if you keep it simple and it's, say, one list of learning objectives on one competency, one rubric that's just matter not yet, and your faculty will tell you which assignments to connect it to, an afternoon for all of that setup. It's not too bad. Like if you can get to your department org unit, like if you're an administrator of your LE and you go to org unit editor and run a search for it and jump in, you might have to tweak some permissions, turn on competencies, turn on rubrics at the department level. We had them off at department level. And so you build stuff and you just say share with all course offerings underneath this org unit. And then you just go to the course, find the assignment folder, 10 clicks an assignment folder, 8 clicks, maybe 15 for a quiz. And the copy components does keep. So once it's set, as you copy the course forward, it maintains the relationship as long as it stays in the same department. It'll maintain the relationship to those learning objectives and competencies.
Okay. And one more question about the data hub. So if you have, let's say, 10 learning objectives that make up a competency, if you miss a reporting of one learning objective or a student fails on one learning objective, that means that they haven't met that competency then? So it could be
If they turned in something and the faculty member said not yet, then they have not met it, and it will be in the file.
Okay.
If they never turn in an assignment folder, like if they just don't turn in their term paper, and that's the assignment, the activity that's being done, there's an absence of data, and you may need to involve additional files from Data Hub to show the absence of data.
But then on the other side, if we haven't built the architecture correctly and haven't attached a learning objective properly or missed it altogether, we won't get the reports that we need.
If you never attach the learning objective and the faculty never clicks, if you attach the learning objective, I believe it's still in your file. But if the faculty member never clicks met or not yet, it's empty for that student.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. I think there's a question here about have we tested copying components?
I was just wondering if you've tested import and export with that same maintenance of those connections.
I have not tested import.
I
and
know
export.
that Rubrics used to have that issue and they fixed it, so way to go, D2L. But I just wanted to see if you had tested that yet.
We have only done copy from within the same LE. Yep.
I'm just going to say we have about 4 minutes left or
Sure.
so. And I wanted to, I was going to get you to announce
Oh yeah, sure.
the code for attending the session. Although, isn't learning something really a better badge? No, actual swag is better. We all know that. I don't even know what you get. Does anyone know what you win? That's what.
There were
They said-
a question in the blue shirt, and there was another over here, I believe.
Have you found any easy way to test or do pre-test, post-test?
Pre-test, post-test. You mean like of the process or of students?
So like
Related to
their-
competency pre-test, post-test?
like where they test for their ability coming into the class and then at the
Sure.
end of the class.
Yeah, so like if you're doing an assignment folder with a rubric, the pre-test might be a day one activity or a week one activity, and they submit to it, and you've just attached everything the same way, and then you go down to the final assignment in December, you attach the same stuff the same way, and so you've got it connected to two folders in the same class, and your Excel file is just going to tell you met or not yet on assignment 1 and met or not yet on assignment 7. Does that make sense? Okay. I think there was one more on the side. That's the code for anybody playing the games.
So I just had a question about the learning objectives. Is every learning objective completed in one course only?
Doesn't have to be.
Because that's one of the things we've been running into is that if you have a learning objective that could be completed in multiple courses,
Yep.
but it'll get checked off if it's completed in just one course. You can't set it up to do all courses, or you can't set it up to say you have to do this learning objective in all courses.
So when you get to Data Hub and you're actually analyzing the raw data, you can totally see which course it was done in and which it wasn't, and if it was done in multiple or just one. But the trick is to get to Data Hub.
Okay.
Right? If you're just in the LE, if you're just in the GUI of competency tool, it's not going to do what you're looking for.
Okay,
But if you get it out to Data Hub, it'll do what you want.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. One question, last question. Everybody want it? All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and stop there. Thank you for your time today. I hope I was useful, and enjoy Fusion. Thank you.